Master Your Moment podcast. I'm Leslie, your host, and I am here with Amy Hagar,
Yeah.
and she is here with us today to talk about communication and how communication impacts our lives. So, Amy, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience related to communication?
Yeah. Well, I have my degree is in mass communication. And so really I think though I knew early on when I was younger that I wanted to be a communicator. I used to be on the radio. So I started my first radio show when I was 12. So
Wow.
really, communication has been something that I've been doing for a while. And now what I love about it is I love to help people find their best way to communicate. And so that way, I feel like people just pigeonhole people and they're like, oh, you can only have these types of conversations in person and these types of conversations should be via email. And I don't know, I'm not all about that. I think you should be able to show up wherever you're strongest and communicate. And that's how you're going to best enroll into the message or the vision or whatever you want to call it that you're trying to communicate about.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So in our conversation, when we first met, you had talked about how there were 5 different ways to communicate. Can you
Yeah.
tell us about what those 5 ways are?
Yep. So the 5 ways are the first one in no particular order is live in person. Video is another way. Audio is the third way. Written is the fourth way. And visual is the fifth way. And some people think they're really great at all 5, but I bet you there is one that is more your strength than any other. And there's actually a quiz out there that you can take to uncover what one of those 5 you are. And I always say, don't guess, just take the quiz. It's called the Content Personality Quiz. We use this to help people market and sell their businesses and how to create their marketing and selling strategy. That
Mhm.
is the main purpose. I want to be upfront and clear about that, about the quiz.
Yeah.
But where I've also been able to really use this is leadership, teams, and people who do they need to communicate messages even though they may not be marketing and selling something on a daily basis. And so by uncovering which one of those 5s you are, energetically you're more in tune with yourself to deliver a message,
Mhm.
and therefore you're going to connect deeper with the person or the people that you're trying to speak with. So
Right.
live in person, video, audio, written, and visual are the 5 communications types that I would
And you
say.
said that there was one that most people think that they are, and that's it.
Yes. And so I would say when you take the quiz, answer those questions. Again, it's the content personality quiz.
Mhm.
Answer those questions and just through your gut. You can't get it wrong, right? And once you get your results, what I would do is I would just evaluate. So if you get a result that says you're a written content personality type, that's going to mean that you best communicate through the written word. So think emails, text messages, DMs, whatever that may be in the written format. And think about how you communicate to people. Are you using the written word? Um, live in person people being on Zoom in a situation like this. So what it really aligns with is the energy of how you're creating what you need to say. So live in person people feed off of the energy of the other person or other people in the room to
Right.
best energetically communicate whatever they're trying to talk about. Where a video person doesn't need that interaction with people. They can really explain something really well and connect deeply with no one being in the room. And
Yeah.
so, the talking head type video, maybe slideshow presentation type things, or maybe even like animated videos, and you're walking someone through or explaining what you're wanting to talk through. An audio person, usually you can tell you're talking to an audio person when you're on the other end of the phone and you're like, wow, I could talk to you all day long. That person's probably audio. And so they don't need the visual of, having someone in the room with
Mhm.
them. They don't need to have that video component to help them explain. They're really, really good at guiding someone through a decision-making process or a choice with their voice. like I said, written, think emails, DMs, things along those lines. Visual is kind of fun. So there's two ways that you could be visual. The first is maybe you're really great at creating like infographics or visual components to really walk people through what you're trying to talk about. Or you
Right.
were that kid in elementary school getting in trouble for doodling on your paper. That's a really
Yeah.
clear sign that you need to be doing something visually when you're communicating in order to best energetically show up and communicate that message.
Yeah, I think that's definitely me. I have to have a visual going on
When you
for
were telling me that you have like little notes around your desk and stuff, that
sure.
is very much so a visual quality. But like I said, don't guess, just take the quiz. It takes like 30 seconds. Again, just Google content personality quiz. And it's very enlightening to see. And the person who created this quiz is my business partner. She's used science and philosophy and everything, psychology behind putting together the questions for the quiz. And she thought for years she was written. She went to school and has a master's in writing. She taught eighth graders, and she had written a book already at this point. And so
Right.
she was using writing as her main way to communicate. And like things were just falling flat. And she took the quiz and she was live in person, but she's very introverted. So she was like, no, that can't be right. She like crumpled up the quiz because it used to be on a piece of paper and like tossed it across the room and ignored it for a few years.
Right.
And again, I work with business owners mostly. When she really stopped using writing as her main way to communicate and really tapped into what live in person meant to her, and it actually meant teaching in small groups,
Mhm.
that's when her business really turned around. So she was making like 250,000 a year doing the written way.
Mhm.
She skyrocketed to 400,000 within a year after stopping the writing of her communicating and focusing on the live in person communicating. So
Right.
it's a really interesting way to look at it. Again, people think they should be doing all five, or there's situations where you should only communicate things in person. Question it and
Right.
really ask yourself, can I communicate in the strongest way that I came up on the quiz? And if it's yes, then go for it.
Yeah, but I think that, everybody's probably going to have to communicate in all those ways at some point.
Right. Yeah.
But if you're developing something that needs to maybe focus, if you want to have that intention about communicating in your best way, then maybe that's where you stem from, right?
Right. Exactly. And so like when I have to write an important email, I will get on Zoom with somebody and talk through it, use the closed captions on Zoom, and then go back and edit it. And then that's what I'm going to send. And anytime I get asked to write something, I mean, I went to journalism school. I'm a
Right.
horrible writer. I'm
Yeah.
really great at doing the interview. I'm really great at doing the research, but when it comes down to like typing out the words, I'm really bad at it. Written is clearly not my content personality type, or not my best way to communicate. So I'll turn a transcript into something written. And that's been my hack. So it's very fun to kind of play with and experiment. And when you can lead from that place of strength, go for it.
Yeah. What do you think the barriers are in communication?
So I would say that we're so rigid in our thinking sometimes that we put these barriers in place when it doesn't actually make sense. Like,
Right.
I feel like a lot of times people will be like, "Ah, I don't want to bother them, so I'm not going to pick up the phone and call. I'm going to send an email." But then you're like, "Oh, my emails just get lost with all the other emails," right? So there's so much communicating, I think, that happens nowadays because we have technology to do it and we have the time to do it, that we're in communication overwhelm. And so when you're really in that overwhelm, or when you're communicating to somebody who's in overwhelm, it's very, very hard for them to hear. And so I, again, go back to your strength. How do you best communicate and go that way? And when you have a team, knowing everybody else's content personality style is super duper helpful. So I may be a live in person, but I might be managing someone who's written or visual. And usually that also means kind of how they absorb content as well. And so as a manager, usually I'll create some way in my live in person way, but deliver it to them in the way that they can best understand it too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, how can you tell what someone else's best style of communication is?
So I would say, to be honest, take the quiz. Don't
Take the
guess.
quiz.
And like I said, like my business partner thought she was written and she's good at it, but really it's not the most effective way for her to communicate. And the last time I built a team and used this tool to build the team, when I came on board, the CEO was written, but he was going around and like doing live presentations and just it
It
wasn't good.
wasn't working.
It was not good. The coordinator, the office coordinator was a visual person. So that worked out really well because they had to be in charge of our newsletter and building our website and graphics and things along those lines. I'm live in person, so that was nice. And then we just needed to bring people on board who were video and who were audio. And the first person I hired was a college dropout this kid was like selling cell phones at the mall or something, but he
Mhm.
scored audio content personality type. And it was fun because when I did his interview, I interviewed him on the phone first. He did great. It was so easy to talk to this guy. And then
Right.
I brought him in person to do an interview. He failed horribly. And the
Oh, wow.
CEO who was written was like, you can hire this guy. He sucks. And I was like, no, we are hiring him to call people. I need
Right.
him to be really good on the phone. So I was like, you call him, do his last interview on the phone, and he'll show you like how great he is. And
Mhm.
so when I brought this person in, our business was about 750 a year. Within 18 months, we grew to 1.2 million by adding an audio content personality type. And then I brought someone else who could do video and who did such a great job at explaining how to use our product and everything along those lines. So they were recording those short little clipped videos that you send to people when they buy or when they have questions and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually a school counselor, like
Yeah.
typically speaking when I'm
Your
not
day
doing
job.
my day job, yeah, is a school counselor. So how do you think that this could possibly help teachers in a classroom setting, or knowing what those kids' communication styles are?
Exactly. So it's really, really helpful. We've had parents use this a lot with their kids. And when they feel like they're just button heads and not connecting, they have them take this quiz, figure out what their, as a parent, content personality type is. So their best way to communicate, and their children's as well. And they, one, encourage their children to then communicate that way. And so we've had one mother who, her child would just be so abrupt and couldn't face to face communicate, and they were a written content personality type. And so the mom had encouraged the child to write, to start journaling, to write letters to her, to write letters to her siblings, to write letters to friends at school. And it really, really helped this child, one, feel heard, but two, it was really, really fun. Like they
Yeah,
really enjoyed it. And so instead of forcing, the child to sit on the couch and have a conversation with me at the end of the day, it was let's
right.
break out our notebooks and let's journal about, someone that we helped today or something along those lines. And so I think by knowing this, especially with children, and giving them permission to communicate in the way that they're strongest, and getting away from being a jack of all trade. Again, we're not in a rainbows and unicorns universe. Yes, you're going to have to use all five probably at some point,
Right, yeah.
but allowing them to really operate from that place of strength and to be able to play and figure out, what does it mean if I'm a written person? What does that mean if I'm a video person? We have one, actually, my assistant, her daughter is video. And
Mhm.
so instead of texting, we told her, hey, just use your phone and shoot a quick video when you need to get in touch or if you want to tell us anything. And so
Right.
it's been interesting watching how that's happened, because she had a lot of anxiety at school. She just felt like she was one of those kids that was being bullied a lot of the time.
Mhm.
And so by her being able to communicate back to her parents how things are going throughout the day through a quick little video on her phone, one, it's really made their relationship stronger, but two, it's
Right.
giving her that permission to use that voice of hers and really talk through how she's feeling. And that's really helped her anxiety a lot.
Yeah, that is really, really awesome. So one of the things I have found is like people focus so much on maybe like your weakness or your weak area of
Yes.
communication or something like
Right.
that. But do you find that like if you focus on building that strength, that that's better to focus on than like focusing on, okay, well, I'm not great at writing, I need to focus on my writing skills versus, okay, I'm great at visual content. Should I not be strengthening what
Double
you're
down.
already good at?
Yeah. So I always say, and again, I'm a business marketing
Mhm.
coach. So whenever I'm working with people, I say, what are you really good at? Let's do that 10% better and see if we can let some of those weaknesses go and be
Right.
okay with that, right? And so
Yeah.
I have a lot of live in person um communication people who are like, I don't want to create a newsletter, but they know they need to do something frequently to stay in front of their audience and such.
Right.
So we really figure out a flow and a way for them to create using that live in person content personality type to communicate that way. And then how can we offset with some sort of regular communication? They may send an email about events that they're doing or podcasts
Right.
that they've been on or interviews, things like that. So I do think that, instead of becoming that jack of all trade, and this is kind of standing on my soapbox, but again, I've been in marketing
Right.
for years.
Yeah.
The one thing I hate is when I see a job description for a marketer that says they have to be great at writing, they have to know how to create graphics. Now on Canva, it used to be Photoshop.
Right.
Have to be able to present at meetings, and oh, by the way, you're also going to be editing videos. Like, you can't ask one human to have all of those skill sets and be
No,
excellent or great at them.
it's exactly how I feel as like an entrepreneur trying to figure out how to navigate creating an online business, like all on my own, because I don't have anybody else and I can't hire anybody else to do those things yet when you're just starting out.
Right, exactly. And so there are, again, we don't live in a rainbows and unicorn universe, but when you can really figure out, all right, how can I do this task in the best way that I can communicate that may not be the traditional way of doing it, and
Right.
let those weaknesses go. So if you're written content personality type, but you need help making phone calls and sales calls, maybe that person is going to be the first person that you hire when you
Right.
have the cash flow, right? So figure out what your
Yeah.
weakness is and hire for your weaknesses is so
Yeah.
important.
Absolutely. So, what would you say are some strategies to improve those different areas
Mm.
um, of communication?
Yeah. So I would say that, one, go with your gut. What feels the best when you uncover which one you are, start playing with that. And I say it's a big playful experiment. And if you feel like it's working well, you enjoy it, keep doing it.
Mhm.
And if you're enjoying it, but it's not working well, all right, that's when we get to reevaluate and come up with a different way. But I also say it takes time too. So give
Yeah.
yourself anywhere from 60 to 90 days when you're trying a new way to communicate. Whether it's marketing and messaging your business, whether it's how you're communicating to the classroom and parents and things along those lines, give yourself 90 days, really commit to it, and then make sure you have that time scheduled to reflect and look back and say, ask yourself, one, did I enjoy this? Do I feel like I'm good at this? Two, what are the results that happened from this? Is it the results that I was hoping for? Did it flop? Did it fall on its face? And if it is the results you were hoping for, then ask yourself, how can I do this 10% better? How
Right.
can I maybe streamline this more? Or how can I enjoy this more? And I keep using the word enjoy because I think a lot of times we don't enjoy what we're doing. And so when we can figure out a way to do something that we have to, quote unquote, have to do in a way that we can enjoy doing it, that's where you really get to master the communication.
Yes. Yeah. That's really awesome. So, you just really want to practice your communication style that best fits you for 60 to 90 days. And if it's working, then you found your niche.
If you're working,
But
you don't need to fix it.
yes, if you're still struggling after 60 to 90 days, would you recommend someone retake the quiz and see if there's a different avenue?
I would reflect on how you've actually been using it. And so again, if you're live in person and you've been having face-to-face conversations, but they haven't been going well, Maybe it is you need to be more in that Zoom environment. Maybe it's one-to-one face-to-face conversations isn't the right, but maybe one-to-many is the right conversations for you to be having. And I think it's also checking in if you're introverted or extroverted as well, and finding what fits well for you. As an extrovert, live in person person, I will sit here and talk one-to-one with everybody and anybody.
Yeah.
But my business partner, who is also live in person, but very introverted, she does most of her things in small group sessions.
Yeah. That would
And so,
definitely probably be more like me.
yeah, exactly. And so I think in knowing that, you're working at a school and things along those lines, think about that with the kids too. Instead of, if you're live in person and you're more introverted, is there opportunities for you to have a couple of them together versus having to do everything one-to-one? Because that's probably where it feels the most draining. And I think the other beautiful thing about the communication style is when you know your communication style and you lead from that place of strength,
Mhm.
other people's follow you because you have that confident demeanor about you, about what you're doing, and you
Right.
have that kind of that leadership of what you're doing. And so again, if you're having to, I hate using the word convince, so I will say if you have to enroll somebody into an idea you have or something that you want to do or something that you want to implement,
Mhm.
double down, use your content personality type to communicate that message, to really show up in your best energetic alignment to get them on the same page as you.
Yeah. So practice, and then also just being able to experiment with
Yeah.
different ways of doing whatever it is, like visually or auditory or
Right.
whatever your method is.
Yeah, and I think, you had mentioned, well, gosh, should I take the quiz again if it doesn't feel like it's aligned? Once you feel like you've had some experiences and you've played and you've grown, you're a human. Your experiences is going to influence a lot of
Mhm.
how you do things. So I would say usually taking the quiz like every 1 to 2 years.
Right.
Usually people don't switch content personality types in 6 months.
Exactly. Yeah.
But having life experiences sometimes really, really influences how you best communicate.
Right. Exactly. I would totally 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
So, how can this communication affect you in different areas of your life? So,
Mhm.
we've talked mostly about work life. We've talked a little bit about school. What about other relationships and communication in those relationships? How can you use this?
Yeah, so a really great I'll use myself as a great example. So I traveled half of the time this last year, and I'm live in person and my husband absolutely is not. But anytime I needed while I was on the road to get him on board with an idea, I didn't just call or text him, I FaceTimed them.
Mhm.
And again, by having that face-to-face interaction, giving him the time to really feed off of my energy, then I was able to talk through like, all right, hey, I want to do this thing, or can we, buy this or go this place or whatever it may be, or I have this opportunity. What do you think? Um, I always would FaceTime him if it was something that I had to enroll him into an idea with. But otherwise, texting or just a normal phone call was fine. And even if I could hold off and wait to be like at home with him to have a conversation about something, then I would. And again, I've got to start talking. I've got to get my energy in the right place for him to absorb it, for him to also be up on the same page as I am. I do have a client who's a hairstylist, and
Mhm.
she's up in Canada, and she's got twin teenage boys and then an older boy as well who's about ready to graduate high school, and she's visual. And so she will leave little post-it notes on their stuff, right? So that way they remember to brush their teeth, because I guess you have to remind kids to do these things,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
things along those lines. And so she thought at first the kids were super annoyed by it. And then when she explained, well, I'm a visual person and it helps me so much in the morning to get out the door on time to see the reminders of what I need to do. When she explained her communication style to her kids, they got it. And they didn't feel like she was, being the annoying mom. They're like,
Right.
oh, this is the best way that you can communicate to us when we're in a rush.
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
and so I
Yeah,
do think, knowing your communication style and communicating it to your family and friends is really, really important.
right. And this is just a really different way to even think about it, because I don't think that most people think about how they communicate in those different ways.
Right.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times when I think about communication, I'm thinking about, okay, well, I need to have good listening skills and be attentive, and I need to know how to put my words together in a good method and be confident in how I say things or things like that to
Yeah.
communicate. But this is actually just sort of a different perspective on that.
Totally. And I think, listening and being articulate and everything like that is all skill sets you still need to have as a human.
Right.
Um, and they all play into communicating. But at least when you're looking at how you deliver a message, knowing how
Exactly.
energetically you best deliver it is really, really helpful. And so, if you are having to, run a group, run a family, if there's, people that you have to be talking to and talking with, and you're like, oh man, like, how do I do this? First tap in and say, well, I know how. I know my best communication style is this, is written, is visual, is video. So if you have that answer first, it's a lot easier than for you to decide how to execute on that sucker and what vehicle you want to use to communicate your message.
Right. I actually have these two students that I've been seeing lately at the school, and they're like really close good friends, but they are coming to me all the time like, she keeps fighting with me, we keep arguing over text, but every time we're in person, we're like best friends and everything's great and wonderful. But every time that we talk on the phone, we're fighting. And I'm like, okay, well, that needs to be addressed then, right? Like when you notice that you're having a difficult time with your communication skills, wouldn't you look at these as different avenues to communicate better? And I've told them, like, if you start arguing, then say, look, we can't discuss this anymore until we talk face to face,
Yep.
right? Or until we FaceTime each other or
Mhm.
something like that could help them better communicate what they're saying versus just through text messaging.
Exactly. And and then there's other people who like text message back and forth fabulously,
Yeah,
right? And so it really is tapping into, all right, who am I talking to? How can I best deliver? How do they best receive? Figuring that out and just being more thoughtful in the way we
right.
communicate. And I think that's how you cut through the noise and that's how you cut through the overwhelm is by just pausing and being thoughtful about how you're going to communicate this.
Yeah. And having the awareness of like, okay, this isn't working, or how this is being communicated doesn't seem like it's working. What can
Right.
I do differently?
Yeah, exactly. I think awareness is like the biggest key to anything.
Hey, that's why like my business is Master Your Moment. This podcast is Master Your Moment, because every moment that you take, you have to be able to master that. And even through your communication style and how you're gonna speak to somebody and thinking about what you're gonna do, you have to be intentional. And the only way you can be intentional is to be aware of what your strength is and be aware of what your weaknesses are
Exactly.
and reflect on those. So,
Mhm.
how do you think technology impacts our communication?
I think there's times that it's enhancing and times that it's, debilitating.
Yes.
And so again, like when you are in that reflective state, what type of technology do you want to use and why? And just being more thoughtful of it. It's so easy to default and do the easy things. But I will say, doing all the easy things doesn't always get us forward in this world. And so
Yeah.
challenge yourself and really think through it. And if you come to the conclusion that, oh, using my phone to text this person is the best way, all right, but have that internal conversation, internal reflection with yourself.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, do you have any tips or takeaways that people can use to communicate better?
I would say, just to kind of sum it all up, one, figure out what your content personality type is. So Google
Yes.
it, take that free quiz.
And if you'll send me that link, I can add that into the
Totally.
notes.
Yep. So once you've figured out that, audit yourself and just take stock. Am I communicating this way? Where can I communicate this way more? And asking yourself, how can I do it 10% better and let the rest go? And like you said, just making sure that you're reflecting and being active and you're listening. All those other skills are super duper important. But the last thing that I will say is if you can find the moments of joy and how you're communicating, that's really, really where that sweet spot is going to come into play.
Yeah, because that's where you're going to be able to build your confidence in your communication and also connect with the other people that you're trying to communicate with. And
Exactly.
and I think a lot of times life is always about having those connections with other people.
Those deeper connections and building relationships. I mean, we're humans. That's actually what we need in this world
Yes.
is deeper connections and building relationships. And so when you're able to really do that and do that well, I always say that the clarity comes from being in conversation. No one's ever gonna buy something from, a quick post or a quick email or a quick conversation.
Right.
Really, normally, it really does come from that deeper conversation and communicating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I plan on having a wellness workshop on January 20th is my date that I will have the workshop specifically on communication. So thank you so much for joining us.